The girl, his wife, Hermione, she left him home alone. Not a single word within the flat modified against him, which was practically an invitation. It was almost as if she trusted him, although it was more likely that she hadn't thought of it. Maybe she believed he was too much of a gentleman to snoop. No, she would have remembered that he'd been a spy. Being a former spy entitled a man to have a look around. There was probably a regulation within the super-secret spy code that mandated he have a look. Besides, she would never know. Only the fat tomcat lounging on her bedspread and pretending to sleep would ever know he snooped. Hermione was mostly tidy, unoriginal with her choice of knickers, possessed an enormous collection of unused makeup. She had a few hundred books, many worth reading, some not. The pile of romance novels fell in the later category. The other bedroom was set up as a computer room. 3 computers, small and sleek. They certainly weren't like the computers he remembered. But what the devil did the girl need 3 computers for? A large TV and some sort of gaming device dominated the corner of the room. Severus scanned the titles of the games. War hero action games. Definitely did not fit her profile. Was it possible she was bringing men over to the house? Well, that would have to stop. The total sum of the small flat yields very little of interest. Oh, there was a fascinating little personal box under the bed, and another stash of dirty books in the far corner of the closet, but certainly nothing abnormal. And in his experience, little Miss Hermione was rather tame. Good. He'd had enough of exotic to last him a lifetime. Just before his stomach took a rumbling, Severus sat out for the shop she'd mentioned, and tried to get acquainted with the neighborhood. Unfashionable, but safe. Granger lived in a thoroughly muggle street in London. Nondescript, ho-hum, post-war, ordinary. How did the most insufferably ambitious witch of her generation manage mediocrity? There was something rather unsettling about that. He passed a used bookstore and made a mental note to check it out later. The scents wafting from the neighborhood curry shop was likewise enticing. A few people were on the street, but nobody threatening and certainly nobody who gave him a second glance. Until he entered the local grocer Hermione had sent him to. The shopkeeper kept giving him a very stern glare, usually reserved for criminals and teenage boys. Well, he'd been a criminal, but was it somehow marked on him? Severus had deliberately chosen his slacks and collared shirt to blend in. His heart started to pound. Was this the moment when the veil would be lifted? This keen-eyed clerk saw him for who he was. Would all the good, normal citizens on the street see him as a criminal too? They would know. They would all look at him and those polite smiles fading, clutching their children and backing away from him, muttering, "Dumbledore's murderer." "Sir, you can't bring that cat in here." Severus let out a sigh of relief and pivoted, half expecting Ushanka to rub against his leg. But no, Granger's ginger beast was not 3 feet from him, looking rather well satisfied with himself for having gotten Severus in trouble. Bloody Gryffindors. Severus addressed the Tom, knowing full well he looked stupid for doing it in the eyes of the Muggles, but didn't care. The magical part Kniezel understood perfectly well. "Go home, then. You've done enough spying for your mistress. Go on, report to her when she comes back. But you're not following me in here." The beast paused, considering, making Severus wait and feel foolish, but he turned tail and walked out, proudly, threading between the legs of incoming shoppers. Severus had no doubt the cat would be waiting for him to depart. "Sorry about that," he muttered to the clerk before grabbing a buggy. Severus wasted time in the aisles. Being only a neighborhood shop and not a large supermarket chain, the selection was not vast and overwhelming, but providing enough to look at to inspect. He read the labels and compared the selections. His mother had taught him to divide the price by the quantity to arrive at the best deal, the cheapest amount. He learned how to scrimp, to buy cabbage when it went on sale, and to ducker for a better price when the tomatoes went soft. It had been some time since he had pounds in his pocket, but what Hermione gave him looked like enough that he didn't have to scrap by. There would probably be some left over for toothpaste, so he didn't have to rely on a near-empty tube, nicked from Augusta's house. Would Hermione buy him toothpaste? The girl probably would. He reminded himself that she'd signed a contract swearing that in the case he couldn't provide for himself, she'd provide for him. That clause was there for the old and infirm, for pure-blood wives and well-heeled heirs. Someone needed to take care of them. The state surely wouldn't. Just in case, Severus threw in the cheapest brand and kept shopping. At some point, while holding up 2 tins of corn and studying them as if they were bow-truckle paste, Severus realized he was dragging his feet. He indiscriminately tossed one of the tins into the buggy. It didn't matter which one, they were identical as far as he could tell. The salt content was higher on one of them, the sugar higher on the other, but otherwise the same. He was stalling, and probably looked like a big bloody idiot to any bystanders, of which there were none. He still felt like an idiot. Intimidated and fearful of the grocery clerk, dawdling like a fool who doesn't have anything better to do with his life, he was passing the hours, passing them slowly because that was what he was accustomed to doing, accustomed to finding ways to whittle down the hours in prison. One more day, one more night. Quietly, Severus acknowledged to himself that he was responsible for causing himself to feel like a prisoner. Beneath his breath, Severus growled. When had he allowed himself to be beaten? Severus did not stay long. He paid for the goods and left, stopping midway to consider placing a charm on the sacks to make them lighter, but the exertion felt good. It was the first damn thing he'd really done for himself in years. Taking a deep breath of city air, Severus could not detect a single note of sea salt. Azkaban was hundreds of miles away, and Severus was a free man. As a spy, he picked up a few tricks. There were times that he used them for kicks. All the wards were down, there was no one around, he rifled through Hermione's nicks.